Hello, everybody. Thursday again, so you know what that means. It's Shaper Sessions. This week, you have Sean, and we have
Jake.
We're going to go through a bunch of stuff with using Origin to make gifts for the holidays. So let's get to it. Now, we're going to go ahead and go into the slides, and we're going to talk through kind of what we're going through today, and then get into some fun stuff. So we're going to talk quickly about it's gift making season. That means Origin's really going to come to life, and you're going to be able to create a lot of awesome projects for friends, family. We're very excited about that. Me and Jake also really spend a lot of time making gifts for people. So we're going to try to give a lot of knowledge we have to you so that you can take that and move forward. So then we're going to go over quick community projects. As you know, ShaperHub has a lot of users and projects now. We just had 700 project uploaded. So there's a lot of good content out there that you don't even have to create. You can just go there, download it, get straight to building. So we're going to go over some of our favorite picks, and then we will talk a bit about Shaper Assist and how it might help you for the holiday season. And then we're going to get into the live demos. This one's going to be focused around some cool tips and tricks that we think are going to be really make the creating season fun for you. And then we'll talk with Jake about finishing, because he's pretty masterful when it comes to that stuff. So we'll talk about finishes. And then the last thing is we're going to walk through how to create and share a project on ShaperHub step by step. And Jake's going to upload a project live for the holiday season. So let's jump into gift making season. When we talk about Origin, we kind of think about, hey, what is awesome about Origin? One, you get to make these handmade gifts. You're putting your kind of soul into these gifts, I think, in a lot of ways. So the gifts that come out of these projects are going to blow people away. I've seen it over and over. Christmas, Thanksgiving, other holidays, birthdays, where just giving people projects that you've made by your own hands is something really cool. So with Origin, you're making by hand still, and you actually have a lot of versatility in how you make and being able to make kind of prototypes as you're making. So I find being in the shop with Origin in the holiday season is just one of the funnest times, because you're really pushing the limits of the machine and how you're using it. The second part is personalization. Obviously with Origin, you can do really quick personalization projects. So, depending on what you're doing, you can actually take kind of some really simple projects and turn them into something really nice. So we'll talk a bit about that with text and inlays and initials. And then the last thing is just customization, taking kind of finished objects and adding little flair or elements to that to really kind of deliver a really nice gift for people. So these are kind of the three things that we'll be thinking about as we go through this session, and I hope when we get out of it, you'll have some really good step up from where you came from. We're going to go through a little bit of ShaperHub projects. As I told you earlier, we have a bunch on there, and there's just some awesome projects on ShaperHub now, especially when it comes to gifts. So we're going to go through a few of our favorite things. Me and Jake kind of picked out a bunch, and we'll kind of walk through those. So first up, wooden toys, right? This is like a classic holiday gift. We have some really cool ones on here. I just wanted to bring out three that I haven't made all of these, but a few of them I have made. So I can definitely guarantee they're easy to make and well done. One of the things to keep in mind when you're on ShaperHub is, these projects were hopefully created by someone and tested, but not guaranteed. So make sure when you're testing stuff out, you're making sure you're not doing it on a final piece, making sure that you know how it's going to work, and maybe even leaving a little room in there for if mistakes happen from the project instruction side. But these are actually all good. The tugboat's really cool. I've made this one. It's a great child's toy. Pretty easy and simple. A good, quick, last-minute project. The dinosaurs is a really cool one for kids. Quick cutouts. And if you look into that project on ShaperHub, which we'll show you in a little bit how to search, you'll see that there's a few little on-tool features that you can add with text underneath the dinosaurs. So when the kids lift it up, they get the name of the dinosaur underneath. I really like that one. The letter blocks are really cool, especially if you have Workstation. You kind of can cut these in small blocks on just kind of in stock. Just get a bunch of them and then bring them over to Workstation and cut all the letters out for a name, for a thing, and then you have this really personalized gift. And then most recently, there was a rocking horse uploaded, and it's really cool. It comes with all the parts, shows you how to build it step by step, and the instructions are really nice. So as you're doing it, you're learning a bunch of steps on building. So I think wooden toys are always a winner for Christmas. classic woodworking projects. And now with ShaperHub, you can kind of pull them in quickly without having to worry about all the design stuff and quickly get to building. So that's wooden toys. Obviously, there's a whole lot more on ShaperHub, and we're going to show you how to search in a minute, but keep an eye on that. So next up, we're going to talk a little bit about games. So I personally think these are some of the most fun ones. Being able to create a wooden game or use different materials to create games like this is actually something that you give once, and then the game obviously gives on as people play it with the experiences they have with it. The Tesoro game board's really cool. It's a big engraving game where you essentially you place these tiles down and you're trying to kill people off by them running into an empty space. The Crokinole board is a Canadian game, which I've heard a lot of people say is a really fun one where you're kind of flicking a little disc along the top. And there's some cool finishing techniques in that one where you're trying to get a really nice friction on how they slide around. The Simple Puzzle is actually one that was uploaded a couple years ago, and this one's a kind of a Christmas favorite because you can crank a lot of these out quickly, and it's kind of one of those puzzles where some people just get it and some people don't. And I've seen it where it takes 30 minutes or an hour to unlock it the first time. So it's kind of this cool piece that fits together. And then the Pegs and Jokers game is a cool card game where you're cutting out this one piece as many times as you want, and they actually connect. So I think you can do, it's minimum of 4 players, and you can go up to like 10 or 15 players if you make extras. So it's a kind of a cool one. And then we have obviously the classic Chinese checkers. For anyone who's been around a while, this was kind of a really classic Christmas gift that we put on ShaperHub a long time ago. And I've seen it built a bunch. So that's a really fun one. So games are another great spot of ShaperHub where you can grab these. And like I said, all these projects are kind of one click, send it to the machine, and then you're off into the races cutting and kind of designing on the fly if you like. But really, you don't have to worry about the software, the design process. And I think that, for most of us, we just want to get in the shop and build some of these things, and being on the computer is maybe not the thing we want to do the most. So check out these games. They're really cool. And then next up, boxes. Who doesn't want to make a box for Christmas? I feel like this is one of the quintessential Christmas presents. So there's a couple ShaperHub projects on here. The Dovetail box that Andy did. There's a Shaper Assist project using box joints on tool, which is a really nice one where you can, determine the size and the width of your pins right on tool. So a lot of this is just standard woodworking, and you're using Origin to quickly put in the kind of end pieces. And then there's a really cool one on ShaperHub, which someone uploaded, called Snack Boxes. And it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but what you'll notice, there's a slight kind of taper on all the sides. So you get this kind of, it's not a 90-degree box. It's like a 70 or 80-degree box. And it's a pretty cool build how it comes together. So I would say, this is another great avenue for presents over the next holidays. So, and I'll show you how to search on ShaperHub for this in just a minute. So next up, we have the Shaper Classics. So I've already talked about the Chinese checkers that we uploaded a couple years ago, but here are 3 that I think are really good as gifts for the holidays. And we're going to show you a little bit of the cutting boards later, but the cutting boards are kind of quick, easy profiles you can download and kind of place quickly. And this is just getting cutting board stock ready and then quickly roughing it out with Origin. Jake did a kitchen utensils a while ago, and these are really cool, kind of like gift to give it towards the holidays. I actually really like the way they feel in the hand, and there's some cool techniques that you can learn for other presents as you're working on this one. And then last but not least is the trivet. This one is just a really cool project. I suggest this to a lot of people who haven't used Origin before, because it's a very simple project that has some kind of interesting ways of using Origin along the way, using flip cuts and kind of using cuts you've made to place other objects in. I don't want to spoil it, but check that one out if you're in for kind of a cool project. Okay, and then last but not least, we have to talk about premium projects. These are kind of our ultimate projects we have on ShaperHub. They're built, tested by us, and we have kind of step-by-step instructions on how to build it. The candle holder on the right here is actually a free project on ShaperHub, so everyone has access to that and can easily understand how to make it a little customizable. You can, get into personalization, and it's just a quick and easy project. I've cranked a few of these out for the future holidays, and they'll be kind of fun to give away. And then the one on the left is actually a pin tray by Noah, who's running the session right now. This is a really awesome project where, I feel like this one is one of the ones when you get in your hand, you just kind of feel like, wow, there's some real thought and care put into this one. And there's some really cool techniques as we're doing it using the keyhole cutter. And then I've seen a lot of people online who are actually personalizing it, and it kind of is a really nice kind of present for people. So if you haven't checked the premium projects out, definitely do that. These are really kind of top of the list for us and actually gifts, because one of the important parts of these is you can give as many away as you would like. So that's premium projects. The last thing to go over quickly is Shaper Assist. So for those of you who want custom presents, but don't necessarily want to spend time on the computer, we always have Shaper Assist. They can help you get your ideas ready to cut and go, from an idea to the workshop without worrying about the computer steps. So Christmas gets pretty busy for Assist. There's a lot of people wanting to create custom projects for people. So I would say get your ideas in early. If you don't know how it works, you can check out our website, assist.shapertools.com, and assist.shapertools.com, and that'll actually show you all the kind of how it works. Basically, you give us an idea, we tell you kind of a quote, and then you get to pick whether or not we go forward with it. We build it, send it to you. It goes directly to your tool over the internet, and then you're just in the shop making. So check that out for a nice little Christmas present. We actually have created a quick project for you. So if we go to the next slide, Assist now they put up a quick project just for Merry Christmas. Obviously, there's other holidays, and we're working on getting those up. So don't you worry, they're coming in the next couple of days, hopefully. And then, this is kind of just a quick engraving you can put on a cutting board, on a project, on anything to kind of give that little extra bit of oomph. So that's Shaper Assist. Make sure, check out the website and let us know if there's anything we can help with. We're going to quickly pop over to my screen here. I want to just show you how to search for projects. So I showed you a bunch of projects here. For those of you who haven't really checked out ShaperHub, it's on the main shapertools.com website up in the top. You can click that. And then now we have a kind of a curated list of projects on the front page. Toys and gifts are here. You can always click view all to see more, or we can go to view all projects. View all projects just shows everything in the order it was uploaded, which is nice to see stuff that's timely. So a lot of people are updating for Halloween right now as that's coming up. But, for Christmas projects and stuff, you want to get started early because time will run out. But let me just show you quickly for those who haven't used it. Search bar, you can type in anything you want and it'll show up. Category allows you to select multiple categories. So in this case, maybe we were looking for a toy to make for Christmas. So if we select that, now we get toy. We can click it again and add more, and then let's say decor, and now we have 2 categories that we're searching through. If we wanted to look for something like maybe a camera, we could just search here and hit enter, and then anything that shows up will come up. I wanted to quickly show this one because I think it's an awesome project. It's one of those wooden toys, wooden camera, and clicking on the image shows you different images, kind of giving you a detail of it. You can actually see all the files that are included here by clicking the SVGs, and that'll give you a preview of the SVG you'll be cutting on tool. So you can get a quick idea of, what's included, what's not. Sometimes, not all the files are included that make up the photo, but this will give you a quick idea. Now, in order to get it to your tool quickly, you can click the blue button, copy files to my Shaper Origin, and this will actually send the files into your account on Origin. You can go straight to your tool and get the cutting. And then, of course, there's instructions below which kind of help you through the process. So these are all mostly community projects, but we do have Shaper curated ones. To get there, we can go back to Explore, hit Category, and say Shaper Designed. And that'll actually give us a bunch of projects that we've built over the years. So there's some really good ones in there for the holidays. And then obviously, if you're looking at premium projects, you can go back here and click the premium, and then you will see the premium projects and you can purchase them from there. So, okay, I think that's pretty good. That's, the basics of navigating around Shaper Hub. And then I think we're going to pop over to Jake and start doing some demos.
All right. So let's make a little bit of sawdust, but just a little, because we're only going to be engraving today. I went ahead and did some inlays beforehand, and it's for a custom cutting board that I want to make my dad. He's a big fan of margaritas, so I want to do a small cutting board specifically for limes, and I kind of came up with some fun ways to make it a little bit more interesting. Pop over here to this camera, please. We have a cherry cutting board, and I took a piece of poplar, which naturally comes with that beautiful green hue, and I cut these segments of the lime out with the grain going in the proper direction. Inlaid that about 1/4 inch deep, sanded it flush. Now notice I haven't moved my workspace setup, and I just did all this on with it double stick taped down, because I'm actually going to come back using the same file and do my engravings, kind of highlight the accents of the lime, just give it a little bit more dimensionality. So do that. Origin screen, please. Okay. So zoom out, show you my workspace here. And again, I'm just using a piece of 3/4 inch thick cherry and butting it up against a piece of 3/4 inch ply. So I have my tape field out in front, everything's stuck down. Even though my material is small, I can still look out at that tape field. And over my lime. All right. So this is kind of a double layered design here. I had my whole pocket area, which I cleared out and then did an inside cut in order to fine-tune that fit of those lime slices. And now I also have an online cut, that's what I'm going to engrave, and it's going to basically border where the cherry and the poplar meet. And I'll go ahead and do that real quick, and we'll see how it comes out. Only doing a 0.02 depth, no offset, kind of a one-shot done. One thing I am going to do is I'm going to clear my cut history, just so it's a little bit more clear to me what I've already cut. All right, let's do it.
Yeah, so I think what's cool about this is, we can kind of personalize anything with engraving. Making a quick file or finding one off of Noun project, or literally anywhere that gives away kind of these SVG vector files. You can quickly plop that into a cutting board or a more standard woodworking object that people build for Christmas, and quickly give a personalization effort to that. This one's really kind of exciting for me too, because it kind of, a lot of people think of inlays as, okay, you cut the piece and then you cut the pocket and you put it in and you're done. In this case, I've seen a lot of people do actually really cool stuff where they're cutting inlays multiple times to get more out. So, this is kind of a partial version of that, but I've actually seen it where maybe you cut, an inlay and then you're doing another file on side of that to have kind of multiple layers of color inside of your piece. So this is a really cool little quick one. And you'll notice he's actually retracting a little bit early on that line because the file wasn't exactly right. But, you can just retract anytime you want. So even if the file wasn't exactly correct, we don't have to go back to the computer. We can just kind of do that on the fly here. So, oh man, it looks great.
Oh, that came out exactly how I wanted it to. So I just gave that lime a little bit more dimensionality. We still have the direction of the grain going. Because I cut, or engraved rather, right on the glue seam, it all kind of falls together and seems like one piece. I am very happy with that. So that's good to go. I'm going to go ahead and pry this off. So this is something we made on a computer, a design that we had fabricated using a vector program. But what if we went to ShaperHub and we downloaded that selection of cutting board files, and we would just want to use on-tool capabilities. I'm so happy with that. In that case, we have a file like this, which is already made, and we're just going to use the on-tool text function and pen tool to get a little creative with what we make and personalize it, and taking something that was found on ShaperHub and just making it a little bit more ours.
Yeah, and so both of these files are part of that cutting board set that we put out a couple years ago. And I think there's 2 or 3 other shapes. So
Yeah.
it's kind of cool. You can just pick the shapes you like and then put on top of those as well.
And you can kind of see in my spoil board that I actually cut this shape out of this same workspace. So I'm just gonna like do myself a favor and line that up a little bit.
That's actually a pretty good pro tip. So when you're cutting something and maybe you're going to come back later and you need to resize it a couple times, you've pulled it off, it doesn't fit, and maybe you need to take offset. It's really hard to get it back. But if you cut a little into your spoil board, you can a lot of times do exactly like Jake's showing, is just put some more double-sided tape, line it up, and then push it down. And now the file is actually already there from when you last cut it. So now you can do offsets. Now you can add. It's a pretty nice little trick.
Yeah. In this case, it's not necessary, but if you hop over to my screen, I will just show you when I hop over into my workspaces, I can look through, and I didn't rename it, but I can see that shape. It's obvious. So I'll hop back into that. And there we go. Now it remembers my cut history and everything like that. One thing I do want to do, I made a little cross mark on my material. I want to give myself a grid because I'm going to align on that grid. So add to scan real quick. Good image of that.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get that question, Jake, if you can lift during scanning. So yeah, just kind of, don't go crazy with it, but, pull it back a little bit.
Keep it in plane as best you can.
Yeah, keep it in plane the best you can. And yeah, you can lift up origin as you're scanning. But ideally, you want to keep it on the surface if possible.
Yes. All right. We're going to create a new grid. I have my engraving bit in there, which gives me that sharp point stylus. So I'm going to lower my bit just above my surface and essentially use it like stylus. So for my first point, I'm going to drop that there and there. That gives me a nice line splitting all the way down my cutting board. I'm going to drop that last one kind of where I want the center of my engraving to be. Now when I zoom out, voila, bisects my cutting board perfectly. I am going to go ahead and edit the size of my grid to be about, I don't know, let's say 1/8 inch. Cool. All right, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to make a quick, simple design, say for a couple. I'm going to grab that pen tool and come up about there. Boom. Creating a simple cross. And finish that one. And again, over 4. Pen tool. There we go. And grab that text tool. So we'll do J. I'm going to use a J again down here.
You going to use another J?
No. I'm going to do an S. And I'm going to do P. All right. So just like that, we have a quick, simple custom design with a couple of initials. Just something fun to make it a little bit more interesting. I'll go ahead and cut this really quick so we can see how it looks. Voila. Fun. And now, completely personal. I could have a stack of cutting boards over here, just ready to go. Pop them onto my workspace and do this for friends, family, neighbors, whatever it is. All right.
No, really awesome. I think the way that you show that how you can line up the grid there is something that I use a lot, especially when I don't have a perfect edge or something to align to. Just quickly putting that line. Obviously, if you're looking for really fine alignment, the further away those points are, the more accurate they'll be. So that's something to think about too. But yeah, that's a really awesome little trick for the grid. So, okay, so now I think we want to show one cool little tip and trick, which is something you'll see quite a bit on something like this. Like this is the candle project here. And if you look, you'll see right along the edges where we have a little fillet there. So Jake's going to show a quick one.
Oh, yes.
About why we do this and why it's kind of cool, because it is one of those like interesting little techniques we use on a lot of our projects to make them a little, classier. So
yeah,
I feel like we should have done this earlier, actually.
I sped right past it.
But anyways, we can quickly do that because Origin remembers all these workspaces, so we can kind of do the same trick. We already have a little bit of outline where this project was. We'll quickly put some tape on it, put it down, reload that one workspace that was holding the design for it, and then we can show you quickly how to do this trick. Because I have a few tricks with some custom bits. Maybe while Jake's setting this up, I'll talk about the other ones, and then we'll just kind of go through each one. So, we're going to show one with the standard engraving bit that comes with Origin, but there's 3 other bits I want to talk about, and they are here. So this is a bigger pocketing bit, I forget, what was this one called? The bead bit in the middle, and then this is a keyhole cutter. So we're going to show a couple tricks based on these cutters that kind of add a little bit of elegance or just one little extra piece to a project that you can normally do pretty quickly. So first, we'll show this engraving trick with the engraver. It really puts a nice edge on things. And I think the key thing to talk about here is really, these are typically with these kind of shaping bits, they're 4 bearing bits on a router, and you're kind of running your piece on it. But there's a lot of cases where you just can't get these kind of features into it. Let's say you have something kind of like with a small area where you can't actually get enough of the bearing bit in it. You can actually use Origin as the bearing bit in a way and use the design file to actually hold on to that. So what I mean by that is instead of having a bearing bit that's going maybe like an inside 90-degree corner where the bearing bit's actually going to miss that little corner because the bearing bit has a round on it, this piece can go right into the round and you get a really nice feature there. So that's one of the things we're going to show quickly, and then we'll show a couple cool things with this, and then I want to show you quickly how to put a little hanger in the back of a piece for like a picture frame or something that you would hang on the wall with a keyhole bit, and we're going to do that all on tools. So I think Jake's set up.
I am. All right, so I still have my engraving bit in there, which is a 60-degree V-bit. I'm going to hover over what was the handle hole that I cut up here, and I'm going to put a little internal chamfer on that because, well, that's not frankly possible any other way than this unless you were to do it by carving it by hand. So I'm doing an inside cut here. I'm just going to set my depth a little lower. So we're going to do an 1/8 inch deep. Now the point is just on the inside of that hole that we cut. And it allows us, the deeper we go, the wider the chamfer is going to be.
Yeah, and you might have to play with, depending on how deep you're going, you may have to play with offsets to get the right amount of curve on it. But that's something I kind of find it's fun, right? One of the things to remember when you're doing this kind of prototyping thing, you can always go deeper. So I typically start shallower and then I'll work my way deeper and then move the offset to change where the side's hitting. But you can typically, as long as you do a little inside offset, a positive offset, then you're going to get a nice chamfer on there.
In this case, I'm just going to do a 0.01, stepping it inside just a hair. Right on. So that gave it fun. I mean, at least on the top side, we could flip it and do it on the reverse, but for right now, that is perfect. That's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm going to put a leather strap through that so that it can be hung. I'm also going to do a round over all the way through later on.
Yeah, we can do that with the bearing bit, so we wouldn't necessarily do that with
Right.
Origin, you know, but yeah, for certain features, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, all in all, that.
Yeah, maybe give them a quick up close too, so you can just see. Because the idea is we couldn't fit a bearing bit inside of that, so this is a nice way to do it, especially when you have like angular pieces. That's a really, really slick little trick. So, all right, so that's that one. Okay, now I quickly want to go over another prototype project, which, you know, we're talking a little bit about prototyping, so I figured I'd show you one I made a while ago. So this is this here's a little napkin holder I made, and what you'll see here is it's actually got kind of a insert that fits into it. So I kind of built this with a little rim, and then the idea here is that you can build different pieces to fit and play with it. So when I was working on it, I kind of built this first, and I hadn't built any of the inserts, and I took some time this week to think about what I wanted, and the first one I wanted was a snowflake. So I started building. I picked a couple files off ShaperHub. These are just files that were already on there, and what you'll notice is, yeah, there's some problems where this one breaks off. They're just not strong enough. So that, you know, that's kind of what happens when you're prototyping. I built this one, same kind of thing, but, you know, really thin details where, you know, it's almost too brittle, and kind of was just another thing of that. So I actually changed over to this where I'm not cutting full the way through, and actually now you can see quite a bit. It's coming out pretty good, and this just kind of slaps in there and will fit kind of flush with it. But I also decided, hey, let's cut some brass, because, you know, we cut other materials other than wood. So I created the brass one, and I think that the brass one is it just turns out, and it has a really nice look. So cutting 2 of these for the back, you know, that's a quick project that you can put in. I even tried the other file as well, and you can see I actually got quite a tight fit on this one, which is really nice. It's not going to come out once it's done, but, you know, this can be swapped out for different seasons. You can make different inserts, and I put a little cool brass butterfly on the bottom that no one would get to see, really. I thought it was kind of a cool little hick, because the napkin's sitting here, so no one really sees it, but I know it's there. And I think that's one of the cool things about making things, is you get to do little tricks like that. So napkin holders online, but I think it's one of those things where, like, as you're working on these presents, especially if you start a little earlier, you get a time to play in the shop and really try a couple things and see, hey, oh, that's a cool technique. Let me try cutting some brass. Let me try other materials. Let me try different designs. You know, this is one of the things where on tool, I know what the size of circle is. It's a standard size, and I can just now create a quick grid and plop a circle and a file from anywhere on ShaperHub or online and quickly try out new things. So I think that's a cool little project. I also wanted to quickly talk about another one. Maybe Noah can bring up the slides and show this one. This is a little kind of project I did, which is actually an ornament for one of my wife's boss's dogs. It's actually a picture I took of the dog. I took it into Illustrator. I used image trace to kind of get the vector from that photo, and then I actually just cut it out in Origin. And what you'll notice is I got to the point where it was super fragile. I made it a little too thin, so I decided, hey, I got the files, and I made a quick case that it fits in. So after she gets done with it on the tree for the year, it sits in this nice case with magnets. Jake knows I love magnets, so I'm pretty much any excuse to put a magnet in a project, I'm all for it. And then this is actually another one where I did a little epoxy inlay on the side, and you can see it's not cut all the way through. So I think with the simple changes you can do on tool, you'll actually find that, like, I actually didn't do the fully cut through one first. I did this one, and I decided later, hey, actually it makes a lot of sense to do a full cutout that's really kind of looks nice and fragile. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, we had those kind of brass ornaments that had really thin lines around them, and I thought that was a cool element. So I think you'll find getting in the shop and making, you'll just get to a point where, hey, I'm finding some cool accidents that are actually much better than what I set out to do in the first place. So that's that project. Now, I think quickly I'm going to show how to do the pocket hole demo, and we'll move on to that. So
let's swap.
Okay.
Put some double-sided tape on the back there for you.
All right. Lost my headphones. I guess I should put my hair back for a second. Safety first, people. Okay. All right. So here we go. So same thing. All we're going to do here is, all we're going to do here is same thing. We love double-sided tape. It makes everything, oh, look at that. Jake's already got me set up. It makes everything easier.
Where can you find that double-sided tape?
That's a good question, Jake. I think, the best place to find it is on our store at shapertools.com. This is a tape that we've been using for, I don't know, 3 years or so, that really just, it's the right amount of stick. And it just works so well that, once you find a product that works, it just stick with that, all right, so we're going to put it down. We're going to put some pressure on it. When you start using this, if you haven't used it before, it's really important to get quite a good bit of pressure on it, because that's going to determine if it goes apart later. All right, so we have it stuck down. I'm going to bring it over here, and we're going to take you in the tool. So I'm going to quickly make a new scan. I'm just collecting dominoes and dots and Jake's home inlay, which he did at some point recently.
Well, that brings us up a good point, though. That was just a practice test. Always do your practice pieces in something that you don't care as much about, plywood, MDF, before you move to your hardwoods and your cutting boards that are just ready to be finished. Practice, get those inlays nice and tight, figure out your offsets, and move to the final piece.
Yeah, it's much easier to replace a little bit of plywood than the last piece of stock you have prepared and jointed and planed, exactly. And go back through that process. So yeah. We definitely suggest, plywood is a great place to start. But also remember, I have found it where you're using plywood and then you move over to real wood and things change, the offsets change a little bit. You may not get tear out on plywood, but when I was cutting the other piece earlier, it's just the grain direction is really important. And for those tiny details, sometimes it's not going to hold nearly as well as the plywood. So just a little tip to remember. But all right, let's get back to it. So we have our scan. So Jake showed you the surface grid, where we're creating a grid that's aligned in any kind of angle on the surface. Now, I'm going to show you another one, which is a kind of a hybrid grid. So, and just for everyone out there, the basic grid is where you're touching the sides of the material, and that gives you a perfect alignment with the outside edges. What we're going to do is we're going to do an alignment where we touch kind of both sides of the edge, and then we're going to visually align on the center of a center line. So, for a lot of projects, that center line is just a classic technique where you just mark it out with a pencil, and you already know the parallel, but we're helping the tool understand that parallel with our grid technique. So I'm going to go to grid, go to new, and then, so here we go. I'm going to set my bit depth to 1/4 of an inch because I'm using the engraving bit. And right now, I'll show you in a minute, the engraving bit is a point down. So that's an important part of this step. So I now have a 1/4 inch bit. I'm going to change my depth. I'm going to lower quite a bit until I can touch the edge of the material with the bit, with the side of the bit. So set my depth. Now you can see here, and remember, when you're doing grid, just light touches. You don't need to push very hard. Just make sure it's contacted, and then click probe. And now we have that. So now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go over here, and I'm not going to look at the screen tool line. I'm actually going to look at the bit. These can vary a little bit depending on how you scan. So the bit doesn't lie. So I'm going to raise the bit up, and I'm kind of looking underneath the tool now. I'm going to remove the chip tray just for a minute, and then I'm going to lower the bit to where it's right close to the surface. So it's probably going to be hard to see, but I'm actually looking down in here, right where the tip of the bit is, and I'm aligning with a line. I set my depth up here. Now I'll just take my third probe point, and now I have a grid that's aligned with this edge and the pencil mark. So this is a hybrid grid technique, really useful for a lot of applications, but I find, a lot of times it's I know where I want this, and I want this to be a 0 on my grid. So that's a hybrid grid technique. And now that we have our grid set up, I'm going to go ahead and change to this pocket cutter. So I'm just going to quickly remove the spindle. Okay, so there's that bit out. And like I said, we're just going to use this pocket hole bit here. Keyhole cutter is I think what it's officially called. Is that right, Jake?
That's correct.
Jake's a little more of a professional than I am, so I let him speak to the specifics. Okay, so we're going to put it in and lock it down. All right, now I'm going to do a Z-touch to check that. This is just a one-touch event. It'll automatically determine where the bit is. So when I type in my depth, it'll actually go right to that depth. I know that this keyhole cutter, you can cut kind of any depth you want, but I think when I was doing tests earlier, 0.3 seemed to be about the right amount. So we have our 0.3 depth set. It really doesn't matter what size bit is put into the tool. I keep it small at Engrave so I can see a little bit more. And then now I'm going to quickly change the grid so we can place the pin tool. It's a little more higher fidelity. So I'm going to change the spacing of the grid to 1/4 of an inch. And then you'll see like my line's actually lining up pretty well here. That is 1.5 inches away from the edge, as we can see here in the Y value. And all I need to do is go to pin tool and create this. So now, one of the things that's important to note when we're doing the keyhole cutter is that the keyhole cutter actually needs to be plunged and removed at the same point, so that you actually are cutting deeper underneath the wood and you're kind of creating a cavity underneath. And when you come back out, now a nail or something can hang off of it. So when we're creating a file, I'm going to have to do a little bit of a little trick here, but bear with me. So I'm going to start my pin tool. I'm going to go 1 inch up, so 4 clicks, place my second point. Then I'm going to come back down and I'm going to come past my point by just 1 click. Okay, so now I have a simple pin tool that's going to be the exact shape I need. Now what you'll notice, you see the little blue dot here on screen? It may be hard to see, but there's actually 2 blue dots. Because this is not a closed path, I can start at either one. I really want to start at the one higher, okay? And I'll tell you why. So I'm going to plunge here, go up to the top. I'm cutting actually underneath the material, and then I'm going to come back. And when I get down to that same spot where I started, I'm going to retract. I'm not actually going to go all the way down, but this is the way to do it with a pin tool. You can obviously create files for this as well that you can only go retract and and plunge in the same spot. But if we try to do it on tool, it'll actually create a full shape since they're the same piece. So as long as they're 1 point apart, we're all good. So now that we've done that, it's a really quick operation. Let me see some safety glasses, please, sir. Okay. All right. So same thing. I'm actually going to change the speed just a little bit. Well, it's actually okay. It's at 5 IPM plunge, just to slow it down when it's going through the material at first, and then regular cutting. So, and I'll keep the speed on the spindle at about 4.5, I'd say. So, okay, so just make sure that little blue dot's there and we're ready to go. Here we go. Okay. Maybe. So now we have a keyhole cutter that's perfectly aligned off the top. So when we go, pretty tight, as we go down, it's going to be perfectly aligned. Let's assume this was a sign or something. And maybe put this one on a little too much. Yeah,
Last thing I want is for it to come loose on us in the middle of it.
There we go.
Again, that scraper tool is a must-have, in my opinion.
There we go. Okay, so now we have a keyhole. And as you can see, you're going to see there's just a little bit. If you haven't seen this, actually, the nail will now go in. Oh, I actually did this one upside down. I just realized that. So it should have been flipped 90 degrees, but that's what happens. So that's why you practice on plywood before you go to the final project, okay? So that's a keyhole cutter. Super easy operation. Just make sure you get the orientation right. Okay, so next up, I think that's most of the tips and tricks we wanted to show you.
Yeah.
And I think Jake's going to show you something pretty cool over on ShaperHub. Oh, we're going to talk about finishes first.
Let's talk about finishes first.
Yeah, I think finishes first.
So we wanted to get to you well before the gift giving season, just so you had, like, now's your opportunity to make those projects that may take a little bit more time. That may take 3 steps of finish versus just one quick one. Later on down the road, we'll have last minute gifts and ideas then. But right now we have some time as long as we get into the shop as soon as we can. So I want to talk a little bit about my favorite finishes and what I use them for in what situation. My go-to is actually a flooring finish. It's called Osmo Pollux Oil. So it's a hybrid wax and oil compound. So it penetrates like an oil and also creates a nice hard top surface. It'll work at 1 coat. It'll work at 2 coats and look even better. And then 3 coats, it's like out of this world. There's a couple of different types. This particular one is the 3054 clear satin. And like I said, that first coat still looks good. It's really rich in color, but if you want that little bit of sheen coming out, you'll have to do a second coat, and then it's amazing. Chairs, cabinets, anything like that, it's perfect. I've done a tabletop surface with it, and it works really well for years, actually. I did bathroom cabinets to get really hot and moist in the humid air, and it's held up great. It is not food safe, although I believe it is toy safe, which is interesting. It's all made out of natural, mostly natural ingredients, which I like if we're going into it. All of these are actually mostly natural ingredients. I try to stay away from things that are high VOCs, anything like that, just so I'm not gassing out everyone in the workshop while I'm finishing something. But let's say we're making a cutting board. If I have time to do multiple coats and I really care about this cutting board and I want to make it really shine, my go-to is tried and true. It requires a little bit of patience because it needs to really set up in the wood and harden over time. But it's a polymerized linseed oil and beeswax combination, so it's food safe. I typically do 3 coats, let it sit overnight, buff it off, and then before you give it to the person, give it a couple of days because it's going to kind of leach through a little bit here and there, and you want to just buff it back. And really, the more you rub it, the better it looks. And if you have a quick cutting board or a quick thing that you also want to be food safe, and you're just looking to go for a more natural look, walrus oil. It's a cutting board oil formula that's coconut oil, beeswax, mineral oil, vitamin E, all things that you're familiar with, aren't too strange. Right out of the bottle, it's going to give you a rich color, but not necessarily any kind of luster. You're going to want to put it on, let it sit for 12 to 24 hours, and then buff it off the next day. If you want to give it a little bit of luster, throwing the wood wax for cutting boards on after that will bring that shine up a little bit more. I have a project I will show you that I use that on. And then finally, while we're in the realm of cutting boards, Emmett's Good Stuff, it is really great for small projects. Once you start getting big, it's a bit of a pain because you have to really rush through the application process. You're going to have to buff it off pretty quickly or it'll start to gum up on you. But if done well on a smaller surface, it's a great finish that lasts a long time. So speaking of the thing that I used walrus oil on is a little bit of a holiday project, but a holiday project that's not, well, ideally not too cheesy. I'm going to hand it off to Sean so he can talk about it, show it or I can talk about it, he can show it on the camera. So it is a set of 3 dishes that in its form doesn't necessarily look like anything holiday related, nestles nicely together, but once you pop them out and lay them out, say friends and family come over, it's the holiday season, what is that? It's a snowman.
It's a snowman.
It's a snowman.
It's quite a cool project, I have to say.
I decided to use food safe finish so that you could put nuts, candies, olives, whatever it may be in there. And it nests so that when the holiday season's over, you can put it away and not worry about it anymore. Or leave it out, whatever. A couple things I want to talk about this, and just general these types of projects, there's a lot of pocketing involved. And two different ways to get around that. I chose to sand the bottom surface considerably to make it nice and smooth, everything looking really good. But if you're in a rush, if you're in a pinch, and maybe you just want some contrast color, in the past, I've used a white colored epoxy. And just to kind of show you what that looks like, in this situation, we have a maple dish. Wow, that's bright. So in this case, I just decided to sand it. In this case, I decided to fill it with a white epoxy. And it just kind of gives that contrast. If you get a nice epoxy, it gives a nice hard base. It's great for projects because it's quick. You don't have to sit there and spend time sanding the base of it. You just pour a thin layer in and let it sit and let it cure.
One thing to talk about too, we talked about that the bigger pocketing bit. So we fit a 1/4 inch shank, but you can go up to 1 inch bit size in the area in the bottom of Origin. So I have a 1/2 inch over in my kit that I'll show you quickly, and then here's a little bigger surfacing one that's quite a bit bigger. So here's 2 of the bits here. This one I use quite a bit. It's a 1/2 inch. And then this one's obviously quite a bit bigger, probably closer to the 1 inch territory. I find the 1/2 inch and the 3/4 inch is about the right size when you're pocketing out hardwoods like this. 1 inch, you're going to have to go very short passes to get through that. But it does help the bottom of the surface. I think one tip we should talk about quickly is how to get a nice surface, because I know that a lot of people, they get Origin and they say, hey, my pockets aren't coming out as flat as I would like. So quickly, what I would like to show you, maybe just with my hands here, is when you're pocketing out a big area like this, just think about having constant pressure down. So, Origin's cutting, there's some forces going up inside the machine. If you just, while you're pocketing, imagine keeping a very firm, consistent amount of pressure down on the surface. If you want to do a little bit or a lot, that's up to you, but it's all about consistency. So make sure you do that, and you'll have these kind of perfectly flat pockets, and it won't require much sanding afterwards, especially if you're using a bigger bit.
Yeah.
So, cool.
All right. So we've made this project, and we want to post it on ShaperHub. We want everyone to be able to access it. I'm going to show you how I would go about that. Hop over to the computer. I am on my ShaperHub, signed in as me, and I'm going to go to my projects. And right there, front and forward, create new project. We're going to call this the Snowman dish. There it is. All right. Basic things. We got a description. Really, the more you give here, the better. Or rather, here is a good snippet of description of what it is. Rather, down here is where you want to help your fellow makers out and give them, step by step, the basic, the main points that they need to hit. And I will also say, as somebody that goes through ShaperHub and uses a lot of these projects, the more pictures, the better. Whether they be you have a couple of hero shots, you have a couple process shots, just to give other people a better understanding of what it is that they're about to make and what kind of setup they're going to need built around that. So I'm going to write a little description, a nesting set of dishes. Cut time, a lot of pocketing, so let's say 40 minutes. And difficulty, I would say it's easy. What would you say?
It looks easy to me.
It felt easy. And category is, it's decor. All right, now pictures. The first picture you upload is going to be your hero shot, so you want to make sure that you get the one that you like. Jake's photos. And I know this one's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the first one you upload will actually be the main hero shot. So just whatever one you upload as the first thumbnail, make sure that's the one you want people to see when they're on the page.
There it is. I can zoom in if I care to. I'm happy with how that looks. And I'm going to add another one. Displayed out. All right. 2 photos for now. Come down to my description, or my instructions rather. I've already written this out, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste that. Giving key details like material, minimum material width or dimensions, whether or not thickness is super important. In this case, it's not. I decided to go 3/4. And some tips and tricks, like I put in here that you can sand the bottom if you're looking for a nice finish, or you can do the epoxy fill to add a splash of color and contrast and speed the process up a bit. Again, add your materials here. 3/4 inch cherry.
And one thing to note here in the materials and tools and instructions area, if you put a link to a product, let's say you're using a special bit or some specific material that people might need to buy or an insert, you can just put that link straight in and it'll become a link for people to jump and check it out.
Yep. So now I'm over to make a decision whether I want to make this public or private. If it's something that I'm still working on and I just want to keep all my information here, all my thicknesses and cutting instructions, I can make this private and only I see it, or I can share that link, and as long as other people have the link, they can view the private project as well. But I'm, for right now, or if I'm ready to go straight to the public, I could do public. For now, I'll save that as private. And I can come back and I can make any additional edits I like. Say if I decide I can do that faster than 40 minutes, or if I have more photos later on that I want to add. But I'm going to make sure to get this up as soon as I can so that you guys can make it before the holiday season.
Perfect. Yeah, and like you said, we can quickly create projects and share them. Even if it's a private project, you can actually share that with people through a link. So on that page, just clicking copy link and sending it either in a forum or in the community forum or in a text message. People, you can translate that over to them. They can get the files, start cutting, test it out, and then when you get finished, then you make it public, hit save, and then now it's available to everyone on ShaperHub. So that's a quick creating a project. I think we're excited for everyone to contribute and actually take their designs and give everyone else the ability to create those as well. So we have a great community where people share these designs. Make sure you go check out ShaperHub if you haven't seen it yet. And we look forward to what comes soon. So I think that's pretty much going to do it for us today. Thank you for joining. We love hanging out with you on Thursdays. We will see you next time.